Block 1. The espresso machine hissed angrily behind me as I balanced 4 plates along my forearm, a skill perfected over 3 years at Bella Notte. The restaurant hummed with Friday night energy, clinking silverware, animated conversations in English punctuated by Italian expressions from our regulars, and the rich aroma of garlic and basil that perpetually clung to my uniform no matter how many times I washed it. Table 7's still waiting on their appetizers, Sophia. Marco, the head chef, barked through the service window. I nodded, swallowing my retort. At 26, with a master's degree in linguistics gathering dust while I served overpriced pasta to Boston's elite, I'd learned when to pick my battles. Tonight wasn't the night. Not after being on my feet for 10 hours straight. Not with rent due in 3 days. And certainly not with the persistent headache blooming behind my left temple. "I've got hands full, Marco. I'll be right there," I managed, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The weight of exhaustion dragged at my shoulders as I delivered the 4 plates to a boisterous table of businessmen who barely acknowledged my existence. That's when the front door opened, and the entire atmosphere of Bella Notte shifted. I felt it before I saw it, a sudden drop in volume, conversations faltering mid-sentence, the strange electric sensation of collective held breath. Even Marco went silent in the kitchen. My gaze drifted toward the entrance, where Giuseppe, our normally unflappable maitre d', was practically bowing, his usual confidence evaporated. 3 men entered. No, 1 man entered, flanked by 2 others who surveyed the restaurant with calculating precision. The man in the center wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders. His dark hair was impeccably styled, with just enough silver at the temples to suggest experience rather than age, but it was his eyes that caught me. Obsidian dark, taking in everything while revealing nothing. I knew who he was, even before Giuseppe escorted him to our finest table in the private alcove. Everyone in Boston's North End knew Vittorio Moretti. Officially, he owned a shipping company and several high-end businesses downtown. Unofficially, he controlled everything that moved through the port, legal or otherwise. His family had roots in Sicily going back generations, with branches that extended into every corner of the city. I didn't realize I was staring until one of his guards, because that's what they were, not friends, not associates, locked eyes with me. I quickly dropped my gaze, turning back to my tables with my heart inexplicably racing. "Sophia," Giuseppe hissed, appearing at my elbow. "Mr. Moretti's table is yours tonight." The blood drained from my face. "What?" "No, give it to Anthony. He handles all the VIPs. Anthony called in sick, and Mr. Moretti specifically requested a server who wouldn't hover." Giuseppe's expression told me this wasn't negotiable. Just be professional, be quick, and for God's sake, don't make him wait. I nodded mutely, smoothing my black apron with trembling hands before gathering my courage and approaching the alcove. The 2 guards sat with their backs to the wall, facing the restaurant, while Moretti occupied the seat that commanded a view of both the entrance and the entire dining room, strategic, calculating. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Bella Notte. May I start you with something from the bar?" I was proud that my voice remained steady, even as I felt Moretti's gaze assessing me. "The 82 Brunello," he said, without looking at the wine list. His voice was unexpectedly soft, with a cadence that suggested Italian was his first language despite the perfect English. "And water, no ice." I nodded, writing nothing down. "I'll have that right out, sir." As I turned to leave, I heard him murmur something in Sicilian to his companions, a dialect I recognized instantly from my research. My grandmother had been Sicilian, and though she died when I was young, she'd sparked my fascination with the language. My thesis had focused on endangered Italian dialects, with particular emphasis on Sicilian and its variations across different regions. What froze me mid-step wasn't just that he was speaking Sicilian, but what he was saying. "Beda piccirida, ma pari persa come una pupa. Troppo delicata pistumunu." Beautiful little one, but she looks lost like a doll, too delicate for this world. The words weren't meant for me to understand. They were spoken with the confidence of someone who knew they were speaking in code. His guards chuckled, one of them adding, Forse può essere utile. Sapi ubbidire senza domani. Maybe she could be useful. Knows how to obey without questions. Something hot and defiant flared in my chest, overriding my fear and better judgment. I turned back slowly, meeting Moretti's eyes directly for the first time. Lu rispetto si guadagna, non si pretendi, I replied softly in perfect Sicilian. Respect is earned, not demanded. The silence that followed was absolute. The guard who had spoken reached inside his jacket, but Moretti held up one finger, just one, and the man froze. Moretti's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes as he studied me with new intensity. "And where does a waitress in Boston learn to speak Sicilian?" he asked, switching to English. His tone was conversational, but the undercurrent of danger was unmistakable. I should have apologized. Should have pretended it was just a phrase I'd picked up. Should have done anything except what I did next. "My grandmother was from Palermo," I said, matching his calm tone while my heart thundered against my ribs. "I studied linguistics at Boston University, specialized in endangered Italian dialects." A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed his face before it settled back into its impassive mask. "Interesting. A scholar serving pasta." "The economy isn't kind to academics," I replied, then added, "The Brunello will pair beautifully with our ossobuco tonight." He didn't respond immediately, just continued to watch me with that unsettling intensity. Finally, he nodded once. "Bring the wine. And tell me your name." "Sophia. Sophia Russo." "Russo," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "We'll see if your palate matches your linguistic skills, Sophia Russo." I escaped to the wine cellar, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the expensive bottle. What had I done? Correcting a man like Moretti, challenging him in front of his men, was more than stupid. It was potentially fatal. Giuseppe found me there, pressing my forehead against the cool stone wall. "What happened?" he demanded. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Nothing," I lied. "Just intimidated." Giuseppe squeezed my shoulder. "Just serve them efficiently and keep your head down. They'll be gone in an hour." But as I returned with the wine, I caught Moretti watching me from across the restaurant, his gaze tracking my movements with the focus of a predator who had just discovered something unexpected in his territory. When I approached his table again, he dismissed his guards with a subtle gesture. They moved to a table near the entrance, still vigilant, but giving us an illusion of privacy. "You speak the old dialect," he said, as I poured his wine. "Not the modern version tourists learn." "Yes, sir. The regional variations are fascinating, especially—" I caught myself, realizing I was about to launch into an academic lecture. "Sorry. You didn't ask for a linguistics lesson." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No, but I find myself curious. Continue." So I did, explaining how the Sicilian spoken in Palermo differed from that in Catania or Syracuse, how Arabic and Greek influences had shaped the language over centuries. He listened with surprising attention, occasionally asking questions that revealed his own deep knowledge. "You're not what you appear to be, Sophia Russo," he said finally, swirling the last of his wine, "a scholar hiding in a server's uniform." "We all wear masks, Mr. Moretti," I replied, then immediately regretted my boldness. But he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face, softening the hard edges and revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Indeed we do." Some more convincing than others. When he finally left 3 hours later, having ordered nearly every specialty on the menu while continuing our unexpected conversation, he slipped a folded note beneath his platinum credit card. The tip was obscene, enough to cover my rent for 2 months. The note, written in elegant script, contained an address, a time for tomorrow evening, and a simple instruction: "Come alone. We have more to discuss about Sicilian dialects." I should have thrown it away. Should have called in sick the next day, and possibly considered moving to another state. Instead, I tucked the note into my pocket, a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration pulsing through my veins. In that moment, I couldn't possibly know that my impulsive response to his mockery would shatter my carefully constructed life and drag me into a world of shadows where understanding the wrong code could be deadly. The next morning dawned gray and misty. the kind of heavy Boston fog that seems to muffle the entire city. I hadn't slept, replaying the encounter with Moretti countless times, vacillating between the rational decision to ignore his invitation and the inexplicable pull to see where this would lead. By the time my alarm blared at 7 a.m., dark circles shadowed my eyes, and anxiety had settled like a stone in my stomach. My studio apartment was barely 400 square feet, a third-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better days decades ago. Still, it was mine, filled with overflowing bookshelves and scattered notebooks from my academic days. I made coffee with shaking hands, spilling grounds across the counter as I recalled the intensity in Moretti's gaze when he realized I understood him. My phone rang, startling me so badly I knocked over my mug, sending coffee cascading onto the floor. "Hello?" I answered without checking the caller ID, frantically grabbing a towel. "Sophia, it's Giuseppe. You need to come in early today." My stomach dropped. Is everything okay?" There was a pause. Then, "Mr. Moretti has booked the entire restaurant for a private lunch. He specifically requested you as server." The phone nearly slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. What? Why would he do that? "I don't ask questions when someone books a $10,000 minimum private event," Giuseppe replied, his voice tight. "Just be here by 11. Wear the formal uniform." The formal uniform, a crisp white button-down and black slacks instead of our usual black-on-black attire, reserved for special events and wealthy regulars who wanted to pretend they were dining somewhere more upscale than our charming but ultimately modest establishment. "Giuseppe, I don't think—" "Don't be late." He hung up before I could protest further. I sank onto my worn sofa, coffee forgotten as it seeped into the already stained floorboards. This wasn't about Sicilian dialects or academic curiosity. Men like Moretti didn't close down restaurants to chat about linguistics. Whatever game he was playing, I'd unwittingly stepped onto the board the moment I'd responded to his mockery. I showered mechanically, my mind racing through potential scenarios. Could I call in sick? Disappear for a few days? The rational part of me screamed to run. But something deeper, something I didn't want to examine too closely, whispered that it was already too late. Moretti had found me interesting, and men in his position weren't accustomed to having their interests thwarted. The restaurant was eerily silent when I arrived, no prep cooks shouting or servers laughing as they folded napkins. Just Giuseppe standing stiffly by the host stand, his usually warm face drawn with tension. "They've been here for an hour," he murmured, nodding toward the kitchen. His people checked everything, the bathrooms, the wine cellar, even the damn air vents. Like they're expecting an assassination attempt in my restaurant. He straightened my collar with trembling hands. "Whatever he wants from you, Sophia, just be careful. These people, they don't—" He trailed off, unable to articulate the danger we both understood implicitly. I nodded, smoothing my damp palms against my slacks. "I'll be professional." "Good girl. He's at table 9. Table 9, the most private spot in the restaurant, nestled in an alcove with a clear view of both exits. I took a deep breath and walked across the empty dining room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. Moretti sat alone, a stack of folders beside him, reading glasses perched low on his nose as he reviewed some document. He wore a navy suit today, more casual than yesterday, but no less expensive. A single bodyguard stood by the kitchen door, another by the entrance, giving the illusion of privacy while ensuring complete surveillance. He looked up as I approached, removing his glasses with deliberate slowness. "Sophia Russo. Punctual. I appreciate that in an employee." "I'm not your employee, Mr. Moretti," I said before I could stop myself. A smile ghosted across his face. "Not yet," he replied, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit. I'm supposed to be serving you. You can serve me better with your mind than your hands today. Sit." I hesitated, then carefully lowered myself into the chair, perched on the edge like a bird ready to take flight. Up close I could smell his cologne, something subtle and probably custom-made, with notes of bergamot and cedar. "You're uncomfortable," he observed. "You closed an entire restaurant to speak with me. That's unusual. I prefer privacy for important conversations." He pushed a folder toward me. "Open it." With reluctant fingers, I flipped it open to find copies of my academic papers, my thesis on Sicilian dialectical variations, and even my university transcript. My breath caught in my throat. You researched me. I research anything that interests me, he replied without apology. Your work is impressive. Your professor noted you have a particular gift for recognizing linguistic patterns, even in obscure dialects, a useful skill. For a waitress? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. For someone in my organization, he leaned back, studying me with those impenetrable dark eyes. I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested in working for a... I stopped myself before saying something suicidal. For a what, Sophia? His voice remained soft, but the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. What do you think I am? I met his gaze directly. Someone who operates outside conventional legal boundaries. He laughed then, the sound unexpectedly warm in the tense atmosphere. Diplomatic. I like that. He pushed another folder toward me, $200,000. That's what I'm prepared to pay you for 6 months of work. The figure made my head spin. It was more money than I'd make in 5 years at the restaurant. Doing what? I managed to ask, my mouth suddenly dry. Translating. I have business interests that span several countries. My Sicilian associates use various regional dialects, often intentionally to obscure their communications from outsiders. I need someone who can understand the nuances, the hidden meanings. You want me to spy on your own people, I said, the realization dawning with horrifying clarity. His expression didn't change. I want you to ensure my interests are protected. Trust but verify, as they say. Why me? You must have people who... None with your particular expertise, and none who would be viewed as inconsequential by my associates. He gestured toward me, a young American woman, clearly not Sicilian by blood despite your name, with no connections to our world. They'll speak freely in front of you, assuming you understand nothing. The pragmatic part of my brain, the part that had been calculating how many more double shifts I'd need to make my student loan payment, whispered that this could solve all my financial problems. But the pit in my stomach told a different story. What happens if I say no? Something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of respect, perhaps. Then you continue serving pasta. I find someone less qualified for the position, and we both move on with our lives. I'm not in the habit of forcing unwilling participants, Sophia. Coercion breeds resentment, and resentment breeds betrayal. Just like that? I walk away and never see you again? He tilted his head slightly. Does that disappoint you? The question caught me off guard, revealing something I hadn't wanted to admit. That beneath my fear lay a forbidden fascination with this dangerous man and the world he inhabited. No, I lied. It would be a relief. Then why is your pulse racing? He nodded toward my neck, where I knew my carotid artery was visibly throbbing. You're not afraid of me right now. You're afraid of yourself, of the part of you that wants to say yes. I stood abruptly, needing distance from his unsettling perceptiveness. You don't know me. I know enough. He remained seated, completely at ease. You're brilliant but underutilized, cautious but curious. You respect the power of words, their ability to connect, to wound, to reveal truths others miss. That's why linguistics called to you. He paused, his gaze never leaving mine. And you're lonely. No close family, few friends. Your intelligence isolates you. Each word struck with devastating accuracy, making me feel exposed in ways that had nothing to do with physical vulnerability. What happens if I say yes? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You come work for me. Live in a secure apartment I provide. Travel with me when necessary. Listen to conversations. Report anything concerning. That's all. That's not all, I countered. There would be expectations. If you're referring to sexual expectations, I don't mix business with pleasure. I find it complicates matters unnecessarily. I flushed, embarrassed he'd so easily read my concern. I meant loyalty, silence, complicity in whatever your business actually entails. A slight smile curved his lips. Perceptive. Yes, those would be expected. But you wouldn't be directly involved in anything problematic. Your hands would remain clean. I laughed hollowly, but not my conscience. So conscience is a luxury for those who can afford it. He stood in one fluid motion, suddenly close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Take 24 hours. Think about it. But understand this. Once you give me your answer, it's final. There are no second chances in my world. He smelled of power and danger, an intoxicating combination that made it difficult to think clearly. Up close, I could see faint lines around his eyes, a small scar near his right temple, humanizing details that somehow made him more, rather than less, intimidating. "Why give me time at all?" I asked. "Why not demand an answer now? Because I want you to choose this. To walk into it with open eyes." He reached up, his fingers hovering near my face without touching me. "A cage is still a cage, Sophia, even when gilded with money and privilege. I want you to recognize the bars before you step inside." The restaurant door opened then, and one of his guards appeared, murmuring something too low for me to hear. Moretti nodded, then turned back to me. "Circumstances have changed. I need your decision now." "What?" "But you just said—" "Plans have accelerated. I leave for Sicily tomorrow morning." He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. "Your passport and ticket are inside, along with the first installment of your payment, $50,000. The choice is still yours, but it must be made now." My head spun with the sudden shift, the weight of the decision crushing down on me. "This is insane. I don't even know you." "You know enough," he countered, using my own words against me. "You recognized something in me the moment our eyes met, just as I recognized something in you. Call it fate, call it instinct, whatever name you give it, we both felt it." He was right, and that terrified me more than any threat could have. From that first exchange in Sicilian, something had sparked between us, a recognition, a connection that defied rational explanation. "If I say yes," my voice trembled, "if I say yes, I want rules, boundaries, name them. I won't break the law directly, I won't hurt anyone. And if at any point I feel unsafe, I can leave, with whatever money I've earned up to that point." He considered this, his expression giving nothing away, agreed to the first two. As for leaving, his voice hardened slightly. "You can leave if you feel unsafe, but the nature of the information you'll be privy to requires certain assurances of discretion. In other words, I could leave, but I'd better keep my mouth shut about anything I learned." The unspoken threat hung in the air between us. "One more condition," I said, surprised by my own boldness. "I want the truth. Not all at once, maybe, but eventually. I want to know exactly what I'm involved in, who you really are." Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, respect, or perhaps amusement at my audacity. "Truth is subjective, Sophia, but I won't lie to you directly. That's the best I can offer." It wasn't enough. It wasn't safe. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at me to walk away. But as I stood there, caught in his gaze, I realized I'd made my decision the moment I'd responded to his Sicilian taunt the night before. "When do we leave?" I asked, taking the envelope with fingers that had finally stopped trembling. His smile was barely perceptible, but it transformed his face, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the carefully controlled exterior. "Be ready at 5 a.m. A car will pick you up." He handed me a card with an address. "Pack lightly. Anything else you need will be provided." I nodded, feeling strangely calm now that the decision had been made. The anxiety that had churned in my stomach all morning settled into a steady, low-grade hum of anticipation. "May I go now?" I asked, needing space to process what I'd just agreed to. "One moment." He reached into another folder, extracting a photograph. "Do you recognize this man?" I studied the image of a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a distinguished profile. "No." "Should I?" "His name is Antonio Ferrara. He'll be at our meeting in Sicily." Moretti's eyes remained fixed on my face, watching for any reaction. "He speaks a particularly obscure variation of the Catanian dialect, deliberately archaic. Few outside his immediate circle can follow it." "And you think I can?" "I know you can. Your thesis specifically analyzed that variant." He tapped the photograph. "Ferrara believes his dialect gives him an advantage in negotiations. I want you to remove that advantage." I nodded slowly, understanding my role more clearly now. "You want him off balance." "Precisely." He seemed pleased by my quick grasp of the situation. "You'll attend as my cultural attaché. My interest in preserving Sicilian heritage provides the perfect cover for your presence. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would be hidden in plain sight, my true purpose masked by a plausible explanation that would appeal to the vanity of men like Ferrara. It was manipulative, calculating, and undeniably clever. What exactly are these negotiations about? I ventured. Moretti's expression cooled slightly. Shipping routes, import fees. Nothing that need concern you at this stage. Shipping routes. Right. A convenient euphemism for whatever illicit goods were actually being transported. I swallowed hard, reality crashing back as I remembered exactly what kind of man I was agreeing to work for. "You're having second thoughts," he observed. "That's wise, but unnecessary." He closed the distance between us again, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You'll be under my protection, Sophia. In my world, that means something." The implication was clear. His protection was both a shield and a cage. No one would harm me because I belonged to him now. The thought should have terrified me, but instead it sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said, needing to escape the intensity of his presence. He nodded, dismissing me with a slight gesture. As I turned to leave, he called after me, "Sophia." I paused without turning around. "Leave your resignation with Giuseppe. You won't be returning to Bella Notte." My apartment felt smaller than usual that night as I packed my meager belongings into a single suitcase. What does one bring when running away with a mafia boss? I settled on practical clothes, my most important research materials, and the small silver locket containing the only photo I had of my grandmother, the woman whose Sicilian heritage had set me on this dangerous path. Sleep eluded me entirely. I spent the hours alternating between panic and a strange, fatalistic calm. By the time the sleek black Escalade pulled up outside my building at precisely 5 a.m., I had moved beyond fear into a state of numb acceptance. The driver was one of the men from the restaurant, his face impassive as he took my suitcase and opened the rear door. I expected to find Moretti inside, but the back seat was empty. "Where's Mr. Moretti?" I asked, sliding onto the cool leather seat. "Meeting you at the airfield," the driver replied, his first and only words of the journey. We drove through Boston's empty pre-dawn streets, eventually turning onto a private road that led to a small airstrip, where a sleek private jet waited, its engines already humming. The sight of it made my new reality crash over me. This was actually happening. I was leaving everything behind to work for a man I barely knew, a man who operated in shadows and spoke in codes. Moretti stood at the bottom of the jet stairs, speaking with the pilot. He wore a casual ensemble that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Dark jeans, a light sweater, and a leather jacket that looked butter soft. The casual attire did nothing to diminish his aura of authority. He turned as our car approached, watching as I emerged on unsteady legs. "You came," he said, something like approval warming his tone. "Did you doubt I would? I never take loyalty for granted." He gestured toward the plane. "We should board. There's coffee inside." The jet's interior was a testament to luxury I'd only seen in magazines. Cream leather seats, polished wood surfaces, and crystal glassware secured in illuminated cabinets. A steward took my bag and offered a selection of breakfast pastries that I declined, my stomach too knotted to contemplate food. Moretti settled into a seat across from me as the engines intensified. Two of his guards sat at the rear of the cabin, far enough away to give us privacy while remaining within protective range. "First time on a private jet?" he asked, as I white-knuckled the armrest during takeoff. I nodded stiffly, releasing my breath only when we leveled off at cruising altitude. "The benefits of my world," he said, gesturing around the luxurious cabin. "There are many, as you'll discover." "And the costs?" I countered. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Equally significant, but that's a conversation for another time." He reached for a leather portfolio beside him. "For now, we should prepare you for Sicily. Antonio Ferrara isn't the only player you'll need to recognize." For the next several hours, he briefed me on the key figures in the Sicilian network, their backgrounds, relationships, rivalries, and linguistic peculiarities. I absorbed it all with the academic focus that had served me well in university, asking clarifying questions and making connections between various players. You have a good mind for this, Moretti observed, as I correctly identified the familial relationships in a particularly complex network. Most people get lost in the tangled loyalties. Linguistic mapping and relationship mapping use similar cognitive processes, I replied, the academic in me emerging despite my nerves. It's about pattern recognition, he smiled, that same transformative expression that revealed glimpses of the man beneath the Mafia boss exterior. Your professor was right about your abilities. The casual reference to my academic life, a life I'd left behind mere hours ago, hit me with unexpected force. You really did your research on me. I leave nothing to chance, especially with people close to me. The phrase people close to me hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Why did you mock me? I asked suddenly. That first night at the restaurant, you called me a delicate doll in Sicilian. Why? He didn't seem surprised by the abrupt change in subject. I was testing a theory. What theory? That you were more than you appeared to be. He leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes intent on mine. Beautiful women who work in service positions are often underestimated, overlooked, but there was something in your eyes, intelligence, awareness, that caught my attention. So you insulted me to see how I'd react? I spoke in a dialect that fewer than 10,000 people in the world still understand fluently. The odds that a random American waitress would comprehend it, let alone respond in kind, were infinitesimal. His lips curved into a slight smile. Yet, you did. Fate, perhaps. I don't believe in fate, I said, though the words rang hollow even to my own ears. Neither did I, he replied simply, until now. The intensity of his gaze made my skin prickle with awareness. For a man who claimed not to mix business with pleasure, there was an undeniable current of attraction between us. Whether it was the forbidden allure of danger or something more fundamental, I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. You should rest, he said, breaking the charged silence. We have several hours before landing, and the coming days will be demanding. Despite my certainty that sleep would be impossible, the gentle hum of the engines and the emotional exhaustion of the past 24 hours conspired against me. I drifted off with Moretti's dossiers still spread across my lap, waking only when his hand gently touched my shoulder. We're beginning our descent, he said, his voice low near my ear. Welcome to Sicily, Sophia. I blinked away the fog of sleep, disoriented for a moment before the reality of my situation came rushing back. Through the window, I could see the crystalline blue of the Mediterranean giving way to the rugged Sicilian coastline, the landscape a patchwork of vineyards, olive groves, and ancient settlements. We landed at a small private airstrip rather than the commercial airport, where another black SUV waited on the tarmac. The air that greeted us as we descended the plane's stairs was warm and fragrant, carrying scents of cypress, sea salt, and sun-baked earth. Beautiful, isn't it? Moretti asked, watching me take in the landscape. My ancestral home. How long has it been since you were last here? 3 years, he replied, something unreadable crossing his face. Sicily demands respect. I don't return unless necessary. The drive from the airstrip to our destination took us through winding coastal roads and small villages where time seemed to have slowed centuries ago. Weathered men played cards in shaded piazzas, women hung laundry from balconies, and children kicked soccer balls in dusty streets. It could have been a postcard scene, picturesque and timeless, if not for the way conversation stopped and eyes followed our vehicle, a silent acknowledgement of Moretti's presence and power. We eventually turned onto a private drive that climbed into the hills, ending at a stunning villa perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. The massive iron gates opened without our driver needing to announce our arrival, suggesting our approach had been monitored from a distance. Is this your home? I asked, taking in the sprawling Mediterranean structure with its terracotta roof and ancient stone walls. One of them, he replied. It belonged to my grandfather. I keep it for special purposes. The ominous phrasing sent a chill through me despite the warm Sicilian sun. What special purposes did a man like Moretti have for an isolated cliffside villa? As if reading my thoughts, he added, negotiations, family gatherings, occasions requiring privacy and security. His hand came to rest briefly on my lower back as we exited the vehicle. Not what you were imagining, I'm sure. I flushed, embarrassed by how easily he read my dark thoughts. I don't know what to imagine anymore. That's wise. Assumptions are dangerous in my world. He guided me through massive wooden doors into a soaring entryway with marble floors and a sweeping staircase. Your room is upstairs, third door on the right. Mine is at the end of the hall. There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. We have dinner in 2 hours with an associate of mine. A preliminary meeting before tomorrow's negotiations. I raised an eyebrow. You already had clothes prepared for me? What if I'd said no? The ghost of a smile touched his lips. I told you, Sophia. I don't leave things to chance. A chill ran through me at the implication. Had my choice been an illusion all along? Had he somehow known what I would decide before I did? Get settled, he continued, seemingly oblivious to my unease. Isabella will help you prepare for dinner. He nodded toward a stern-faced older woman who had materialized silently at his side. She doesn't speak English, but her Sicilian is impeccable. Consider it your first test. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me in the care of the impassive housekeeper. I summoned my best Sicilian and greeted her, receiving a slightly surprised nod in return before she led me upstairs to what would be my room for the foreseeable future. The space was larger than my entire Boston apartment, with a canopied bed, antique furnishings, and French doors opening onto a private balcony with a breathtaking view of the Mediterranean. The wardrobe, when I opened it, contained a selection of designer clothes in exactly my size, casual wear, business attire, and several evening gowns that probably cost more than my annual salary. As Isabella drew a bath for me in the adjoining marble bathroom, I struggled to reconcile the luxury surrounding me with the dangerous reality of my situation. The clothes in the wardrobe weren't just my size. They matched my style preferences with unsettling accuracy. How long had Moretti been watching me before making his move? La cena è formale stasera, Isabella informed me, as she laid out toiletries on the bathroom counter. Dinner is formal tonight. Ci sarà presente? I asked, wondering who would be attending. She hesitated, her weathered face revealing nothing. Il signor Ricci, un vecchio amico della famiglia, Mr. Ricci. An old family friend. The careful phrasing and slight tension in her shoulders told me more than her words. Whoever this Ricci was, he was significant, and possibly dangerous. I thanked her, and she left me to bathe and dress, selecting a simple black cocktail dress that offered elegance without being overtly provocative. By the time I descended the grand staircase, the sun was setting over the Mediterranean, bathing the villa in golden light. Moretti waited in the main salon, conversing quietly with another man whose back was to me. Both turned as I entered, and I got my first look at Emilio Ricci, a man who appeared to be in his 60s, with silver hair, a deeply lined face, and eyes that assessed me with clinical detachment. Ah, the linguist, he said in heavily accented English. Vittorio tells me you have quite the talent for our native tongue. Preferisco parlare in Siciliano, se non le dispiace, I replied smoothly, suggesting I preferred to speak Sicilian. Something like approval flickered across Ricci's face. He switched to a particularly archaic version of the Catanian dialect, one filled with Arabic influences that reflected Sicily's complex history. È raro trovare un'americana che parla il nostro dialetto con tale purezza. It's rare to find an American who speaks our dialect with such purity. As we moved to the dining room, a magnificent space with panoramic views of the coastline, I felt Moretti watching me carefully, gauging my performance. The conversation flowed around regional differences, historical influences on the language, and the efforts to preserve dying dialects, innocent topics on the surface, but laden with subtle tests of my knowledge and authenticity. You studied under Professor Martelli at Boston University, yes? Ricci asked, switching back to English as servers presented the first course. He is well respected, even in our circles. The casual reference sent a chill through me. You know, Professor Martelli, we have mutual interests in linguistic preservation, Ricci replied vaguely. He has consulted on several heritage projects in Sicily. I filed this information away, wondering if my mentor had knowingly collaborated with the Sicilian Mafia or if he'd been an unwitting resource. Either possibility was disturbing. Throughout dinner, I noticed Ricci would occasionally slip coded phrases into the conversation, references to shipments, family matters, and respect issues that carried weighted meanings. Each time, I pretended not to catch the subtext, focusing instead on the literal translation while carefully noting the hidden messages for Moretti. By the time dessert was served, a traditional cassata Siciliana that reminded me painfully of my grandmother, I had confirmed my initial assessment. Ricci was testing me, evaluating whether I was truly what Moretti claimed or something more dangerous. "Your student has impressive skills," Ricci said to Moretti as coffee was poured. Perhaps too impressive. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Moretti's expression remained neutral, but I sensed a new tension in his posture. "Meaning?" Ricci shrugged elegantly, only that such perception in an outsider might be concerning to some of our more traditional associates. "Sophia works for me," Moretti replied, his soft tone belying the steel underneath. "Her loyalty isn't in question." "Of course." Ricci's smile didn't reach his eyes as he turned to me. "And what inspired such devotion to our little island's dying language, signorina?" "My grandmother," I answered truthfully. "She was from Palermo. She died when I was young, but she left me her stories, her expressions. Studying the language was a way to keep her close." "Sentimental," Ricci observed, though something in his gaze softened slightly. "Family is everything, after all." "Wouldn't you agree, Vittorio?" "Everything," Moretti confirmed, his eyes never leaving my face. After Ricci departed, Moretti led me out onto the terrace overlooking the darkened sea. The night air was heavy with jasmine and salt, the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the chirping cicadas. "You did well," he said, handing me a glass of amber liquid that burned pleasantly down my throat. Ricci was impressed, though he'd never admit it directly. He was testing me. "Everyone will test you, Sophia. It's the nature of our world." He leaned against the stone balustrade, studying me in the moonlight. "Trust is earned through trials, not freely given." "And have I earned your trust?" I asked, emboldened by the success of the evening and the warmth of the liquor in my veins. His lips curved slightly. "You're beginning to. Tell me what you observed tonight." I recounted the coded phrases I'd detected, the subtle shifts in Ricci's demeanor, the hidden questions beneath his seemingly innocent queries. Moretti listened with intense focus, occasionally nodding. "Your assessment matches mine," he said when I finished. "Ricci is concerned about tomorrow's meeting. He believes Ferrara may be working with the Calabrians. Is that significant? Potentially devastating." For the first time, I saw genuine concern in his expression. The balance of power in Sicily is delicate. If Ferrara has aligned with the 'Ndrangheta, the resulting conflict could be messy. The casual way he referenced what would likely be a bloody gang war sent a shiver through me, a stark reminder of exactly what kind of world I'd entered. "Tomorrow will be critical," he continued. "Ferrara must believe you are exactly what I claim, a cultural consultant with an academic interest in Sicilian dialects. Nothing more. And if he discovers otherwise?" Moretti's gaze was steady. "Let's ensure he doesn't." That night, sleep eluded me despite the luxurious bed. I lay awake replaying the evening's events, analyzing each interaction for hidden meanings. The magnitude of what I'd undertaken was finally sinking in. I wasn't just translating dialects. I was potentially influencing the balance of power in one of the world's most dangerous criminal organizations. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close. As I dressed in a conservative navy suit I found in the wardrobe, I steeled myself for the day ahead. Whatever happened in the coming hours, I needed to remain clear-headed and alert. Moretti was already in the dining room when I descended, reviewing documents while sipping espresso. He looked up as I entered, his eyes sweeping over me with approval. "Perfect," he said simply. "Professional, unremarkable, exactly what we need." "Should I be flattered by unremarkable?" I asked, helping myself to coffee from a silver pot. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "In my world, being remarkable is rarely safe, Sophia." He briefed me on the day's agenda as I ate. Ferrara would arrive at 11, accompanied by his advisors. The official purpose of the meeting was to discuss shipping partnerships, import duties, and distribution rights. The unofficial purpose, I gathered, was to determine whether Ferrara had betrayed the Sicilian networks by allying with their Calabrian rivals. Your role is simple, Moretti explained. Observe, translate when asked, and note any discrepancies between what Ferrara says in Italian versus what he says in dialect to his people. Nothing more. And if I detect something significant? There's a phrase you will use if you need to alert me. He slid a piece of paper across the table. Mi ricorda un passaggio del professor Martelli. It reminds me of a passage from Professor Martelli. If you say this, I'll find a way to speak with you privately. I nodded, committing the phrase to memory before Moretti destroyed the paper. Stay close to me, he added, his tone softening slightly. Whatever happens today, remember you're under my protection. The words were both reassuring and unsettling, a reminder that I needed protection at all. Ferrara arrived with the precision of a military operation. 3 black Mercedes, appearing at exactly 11, disgorging the man himself along with 6 associates who moved with the practiced vigilance of seasoned bodyguards. From my position slightly behind Moretti as he greeted them in the grand entrance hall, I observed Antonio Ferrara with academic detachment. He was shorter than I expected, compact and wiry rather than imposingly built. Silver hair was slicked back from a face that might have been handsome in youth, but had hardened into sharp angles and deep lines. His eyes were his most striking feature, pale blue and coldly intelligent, missing nothing as they swept over our assembled group. Those eyes settled on me with particular interest, narrowing slightly before he turned to Moretti. Chi è la ragazza? Who is the girl? The question came in standard Italian, deliberately accessible. Sofia Russo, my cultural attaché, Moretti replied smoothly, also in Italian. She's assisting with my heritage preservation project. Ferrara's smile didn't reach his eyes. A beautiful assistant for a beautiful project. He extended his hand to me. Antonio Ferrara, I'm always pleased to meet fellow enthusiasts of our cultural treasures. I shook his hand, noting his firm grip and the ostentatious signet ring adorning his pinky finger. It's an honor, Signor Ferrara. Your region's dialectical variations are particularly fascinating. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, at my knowledge. Parli il dialetto. Do you speak the dialect? Abbastanza per apprezzarne la bellezza, I replied modestly. Enough to appreciate its beauty. Ferrara studied me for a moment longer, then turned back to Moretti. Your interests continue to surprise me, Vittorio. First shipping, now linguistics. The subtle emphasis on shipping carried a hint of mockery. Moretti's expression remained pleasant, but I sensed a dangerous undercurrent in his measured response. Diversification is the key to longevity, Antonio, something your father understood well. The mention of Ferrara's father, delivered with calculated casualness, caused a nearly imperceptible tightening around the older man's eyes. Family references clearly carried significant weight in this world. We moved to the villa's formal conference room, an impressive space dominated by a massive oak table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mediterranean. The seating arrangement wasn't accidental. Moretti positioned himself at the head with me slightly behind his right shoulder, while Ferrara sat directly across with his most trusted advisor at his side. For the next hour, the conversation remained superficially cordial as they discussed legitimate business matters, import taxes, regulatory changes, shipping schedules. I observed silently, noting how Ferrara would occasionally lean to his right, murmuring in that archaic Catanian dialect to his advisor. These asides, which he assumed I couldn't understand, revealed considerably more than his official statements. L'americano sta offrendo troppo. Ci deve essere qualcosa sotto, he muttered at one point. The American is offering too much. There must be something underneath. Cansiamo I termini, videmu quanto è disperato. Let's change the terms. See how desperate he is. I maintained an expression of polite disinterest, giving no indication I understood these strategic revelations. Meanwhile, Moretti played his part perfectly, the confident businessman, slightly impatient with the pace but willing to negotiate in good faith. The tension in the room elevated when the conversation turned to new shipping routes along the Calabrian coast. Ferrara's body language shifted subtly, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, a barely perceptible increase in his blink rate. The Calabrian options are problematic, Moretti noted, sliding a document across the table. Recent disruptions in their infrastructure make the timing inopportune. It was a test, carefully disguised as business concern. Ferrara studied the document, his expression neutral. I've heard no such disruptions. He switched to dialect, addressing his advisor but loud enough for the room to hear. Ci su sta cercando di scoprire se avemo contatti cu I calabresi. He's trying to discover if we have contacts with the Calabrians. The statement confirmed Ricci's suspicions. I shifted my weight slightly, catching Moretti's attention. When he glanced at me, I discreetly touched the document in front of me and said, Mi ricorda un passaggio del professor Martelli. Moretti nodded almost imperceptibly, before turning back to Ferrara. Perhaps we should take a brief recess. The chef has prepared lunch on the terrace. He stood, the movement fluid but commanding. Sophia, a moment about those translation notes. We stepped into an adjacent study, Moretti closing the heavy door behind us. Alone, his demeanor changed instantly, the businessman facade falling away to reveal the predator beneath. What did you hear? His voice was soft, controlled, but thrumming with tension. I recounted Ferrara's aside verbatim, adding, He knows you're testing him about Calabria, and he's being deliberately evasive. Moretti absorbed this, his dark eyes calculating. Is he nervous? Yes, but hiding it well. There's something else. When discussing the eastern shipping routes, his advisor kept touching his jacket pocket. I think he's recording the meeting. A dangerous smile curved Moretti's lips. Excellent catch. Recording devices were expressly prohibited. What will you do? Change tactics. He studied me for a moment, as if making a decision. You're performing admirably, Sophia. Better than I anticipated. The praise warmed me more than it should have, considering the circumstances. What do you need me to do now? Continue as before, but I'm going to bring you more directly into the conversation. I want Ferrara off balance. An American woman understanding his most private asides will accomplish that. I swallowed hard. Won't that expose my role? It's a calculated risk. His voice softened marginally. I won't let any harm come to you. Remember that. When we returned to the conference room, the dynamics had shifted. Ferrara had moved to the windows, speaking in rapid Sicilian with two of his men. They fell silent as we entered, the sudden cessation making their suspicion obvious. Lunch was served on the cliffside terrace, the stunning views providing a jarring contrast to the undercurrent of tension. I was seated directly across from Ferrara, a strategic placement that didn't escape his notice. Throughout the meal, he alternated between charming conversation in Italian and clipped asides to his men in dialect. La ragazza americana guarda troppo. Forse è solo una studiosa. The American girl watches too much. Perhaps she's not just a scholar. I pretended not to understand, maintaining my focus on the delicate seafood dish before me. Moretti caught my eye briefly, the slightest nod telling me he was about to make his move. Sophia, he said casually. Perhaps you could explain to Signor Ferrara the particular characteristics of the Catanian dialect that make it unique among Sicilian variations. He has a special interest in regional linguistics. It was a perfect opening, designed to seem innocuous while allowing me to demonstrate my expertise. I launched into an academic explanation of the dialect's Arabic influences and distinctive phonological patterns, watching Ferrara's expression shift from polite indifference to sharp attention, as I seamlessly incorporated phrases I could only have understood if I'd comprehended his private asides. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Ferrara's men tensed, one reaching subtly inside his jacket, until Ferrara stopped him with a nearly imperceptible gesture. Impressive knowledge for an American, Ferrara said, his tone hardening beneath the veneer of civility. Your professor taught you well. Professor Martelli believes in complete cultural immersion, I replied, maintaining my scholarly persona, including the more colorful expressions that aren't found in textbooks. Ferrara's pale eyes locked with mine, all pretense abandoned. And what colorful expressions might those include, Signorina Russo? The challenge was clear, as was the threat beneath it. Before I could respond, Moretti intervened smoothly. Perhaps we should return to our discussions. The shipping manifests require your attention, Antonio. He stood, effectively ending the tense exchange. Sophia, Would you mind checking on the documentation in my office? The comparative analysis would be helpful. It was a dismissal, removing me from the increasingly dangerous situation. I nodded and excused myself, feeling Ferrara's cold gaze follow me as I left the terrace. In Moretti's office, I paced anxiously, replaying the lunch exchange and wondering if I'd revealed too much. The men's voices occasionally drifted through the open window, measured, controlled, but with an unmistakable edge that hadn't been present earlier. Nearly an hour passed before the door opened. I turned, expecting Moretti, only to find myself face to face with one of Ferrara's guards, a hulking man with dead eyes and a faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "Signor Ferrara wishes to speak with you," he said in heavily accented English. Alone, my heart rate accelerated, but I maintained my composure. "I'll need to check with Mr. Moretti first." "That won't be necessary." The man stepped forward, closing the door behind him. "My employer has questions about your linguistic abilities." I backed up until the edge of the desk pressed against my thighs. "Where is Mr. Moretti?" "Still in negotiations." The man's expression revealed nothing as he advanced slowly. "This will only take a moment of your time." Fight or flight instinct surged through me, but I forced myself to think rationally. If Ferrara wanted me harmed, he wouldn't do it here, in Moretti's villa. This was a test, an intimidation tactic designed to see what I'd reveal under pressure. I straightened my spine and switched to the specific Catanian dialect Ferrara had been using. "Dici a lui tuo patroni che parlo solo in presenza di Moretti. Cista è a regola. Tell your boss I only speak in Moretti's presence. That's the rule." The guard paused, surprise flickering briefly across his stony features before he masked it. "You understand more than you should, American." "I understand exactly what I need to," I countered, finding courage in the academic persona I'd constructed. "And I understand that removing me from this office without Mr. Moretti's knowledge would violate the terms of your meeting here." For a tense moment, I thought he might ignore this logic and force the issue. Then the door opened again, and Moretti stood in the threshold, his expression calm, but his eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his soft voice somehow more menacing than a shout. The guard stepped back. "No problem." Signor Ferrara was concerned about the young lady's comfort. How thoughtful. Moretti's tone made it clear he believed nothing of the sort. "You can assure Antonio that Ms. Russo is quite comfortable under my protection." The last word carried unmistakable weight. After the guard departed, Moretti closed the door and turned to me. "Are you all right?" I nodded, fighting to keep my hands from trembling. He was trying to intimidate me, see what I'd say if pressured. "And what did you say?" "That I only speak in your presence. That those are the rules." Something like pride flickered across his face. "Perfect." He moved closer, his gaze assessing. "Ferrara recorded our earlier conversations, as you suspected. When confronted, he became difficult." The careful phrasing sent a chill through me. "What does that mean?" "It means our business relationship has concluded, and he'll be departing shortly." Moretti's expression gave nothing away. His operation in Catania will be experiencing significant changes in the coming weeks. The clinical way he described what would likely be a violent power struggle was a stark reminder of exactly what kind of man stood before me. Yet even as that realization chilled me, I couldn't deny the inexplicable safety I felt in his presence, a contradiction that disturbed me deeply. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we return to Boston." He checked his watch. "The jet is being prepared. We leave within the hour." "Just like that? What about the negotiations, the shipping routes?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The negotiations were successful. In that they revealed exactly what I needed to know. The shipping routes are a secondary concern easily addressed through other channels." I absorbed this, understanding that the entire elaborate meeting had been a pretense, a stage constructed solely to test Ferrara's loyalties, and I had been a crucial prop in Moretti's performance. "You used me," I said quietly. "I employed you," he corrected. "Exactly as agreed. And you performed exceptionally." He moved closer, close enough that I could detect the subtle scent of his cologne. "You're valuable, Sophia, more than you realize." The words, delivered in that soft, controlled voice, sent an unwanted shiver of pleasure through me. Despite everything, the danger, the deception, The glimpses of the violence that underpinned his world, I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. It was more than Stockholm Syndrome, more than the adrenaline of danger. Something fundamental and inexplicable. We returned to Boston that night, the private jet cutting through darkness as I processed the events of the past few days. Moretti worked quietly across from me, occasionally making calls in Sicilian or reviewing documents. The strange domesticity of the scene, like any business traveler returning from a trip, created a surreal contrast to the reality of what we'd been doing. "You're troubled," he observed as we began our descent into Boston. "Just processing," I replied. "This isn't exactly the career I envisioned when I was studying linguistics." "Few of us end up where we expect, Sophia." Something in his tone suggested he spoke from experience. "The question is whether where we land suits us better than where we plan to go." The philosophical turn surprised me. "And does this suit you? The constant vigilance, the threats, the necessary violence?" He considered this with genuine thoughtfulness. "It suits certain parts of me, the parts shaped by circumstance and heritage." His dark eyes met mine. "The more relevant question is whether it suits you." "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I don't know who I am in this world yet." "You're exactly who you've always been, just in circumstances that reveal different facets of your nature." He leaned forward slightly. "You thrived today. Under pressure, in danger. You were magnificent." The praise warmed me despite my efforts to remain detached. "I was terrified. Yet you functioned through the fear. That's rare, Sophia, and valuable." We landed at the private airstrip outside Boston near midnight, the city lights glittering in the distance. As we descended the stairs to the waiting car, Moretti placed a gentle hand at my lower back, a gesture both possessive and protective. "I've arranged an apartment for you in Beacon Hill," he said, as we settled into the back seat. "Secure building, private entrance. Your things have already been moved from your old place." The casual way he'd reorganized my life should have angered me, but I was too exhausted to protest. "And when do you need me again?" "Tomorrow evening. Dinner at my home. 7 o'clock. It wasn't a request. We have matters to discuss regarding your continued role." The car pulled up to an elegant brownstone on a quiet, tree-lined street, worlds away from my cramped walk-up in the student district. The driver handed me a set of keys before returning to the vehicle. "Aren't you coming up?" I asked, surprised that Moretti remained in the car. "Not tonight." Something shifted in his expression, a softening I hadn't seen before. "You need time to process, to decide if this is truly what you want." "I signed on for 6 months," I reminded him. "You did. And I'll hold you to that if it's your choice. But tonight, sleep, reflect. Tomorrow you'll give me your decision with clear eyes." I frowned, confused by this unexpected consideration. "What if I choose to walk away?" "Then you walk away, with the $50,000 already paid. No consequences, no pursuit." His eyes held mine. "But I don't think that's what you'll choose, Sophia." "You seem very confident. I recognize myself in you," he said simply. "The parts that crave meaning beyond ordinary existence, the hunger for something more intense, more real than the sanitized world most people inhabit." The assessment was uncomfortably accurate, naming desires I'd barely acknowledged to myself. I'd always felt apart from others, my intelligence and curiosity creating a barrier between me and the conventional paths my peers followed. "Until tomorrow, then," I said, stepping back from the car. "Until tomorrow," he echoed, the soft certainty in his voice following me as I entered my new home. The apartment was stunning, spacious, elegantly furnished, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. My meager possessions had been arranged thoughtfully, my books displayed prominently on built-in shelves, my grandmother's photo placed on the bedside table. Even my preferred brand of coffee waited in the kitchen alongside a high-end espresso machine. I wandered through the rooms, trailing my fingers over luxurious fabrics and gleaming surfaces. This could be my life now. Comfort, security, purpose. All I had to do was ignore the moral complexities, the danger, the knowledge that I was aligning myself with a world built on violence and fear. Sleep eluded me that night. my mind replaying every moment with Moretti, the intensity of his gaze, the controlled power in his movements, the unexpected moments of consideration. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I spent the day exploring my new neighborhood, familiarizing myself with the elegant streets and upscale shops of Beacon Hill. At precisely 6:30, a black car arrived to take me to Moretti's home, a stunning penthouse overlooking the harbor. He opened the door himself, no guards or staff visible. He'd changed from the business attire I'd grown accustomed to, dressed now in dark jeans and a simple black sweater that somehow emphasized rather than diminished his authority. "You came," he said, echoing his words from the airfield days earlier. "Did you doubt I would?" I countered, stepping past him into the minimalist space. "Not for a moment." He led me through to a terrace where dinner had been laid out. Candlelight, fine wine, the glittering backdrop of Boston Harbor. But I respect the importance of choice, of agency, especially for someone in your position. We ate slowly, the conversation flowing easily between linguistics, literature, and philosophy. It was disconcertingly normal, like any dinner between intellectually compatible people, until he finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Your decision?" he asked as we finished dessert. I met his gaze directly. "I'm staying. For the 6 months, as agreed." He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "And after the 6 months?" The question caught me off guard. "That depends on many things. On what I am," he suggested. "On whether you can reconcile yourself to my world." "Yes," I admitted, "and on what I become in that world." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine, the first truly intimate contact between us. "What you become is entirely your choice, Sophia. I can offer opportunity, protection, resources. But your evolution is your own." "And if that evolution takes me away from you eventually?" I asked, voicing my deepest uncertainty. Something flickered in his eyes, possessiveness perhaps, or the shadow of potential loss. "Then I will remember that I never cage what I value most." He paused, his fingers still lightly touching mine. "But I think you'll find, as I have, that some chains are chosen freely, that some cages are constructed by our own desires." His words resonated with a truth I was only beginning to understand. That the most profound constraints are often those we place upon ourselves. That freedom sometimes lies in surrendering to the inevitable pull of our own nature. "To new beginnings, then," I said, raising my glass. His eyes never left mine as we sealed our bargain with the gentle clink of crystal. "To chosen paths, Sophia Russo, and wherever they may lead us."